when they're younger, they'll go, this looks great. And then they'll look at the same thing at another age, same painting, and they start to critique themselves. You know,
Hmm.
at some point in life, you think, oh, I don't like that. I'm not very good at that. And then that continues into adulthood.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry Seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hirsch Redfin.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
In the Yes Brand hot seat today is Claire Waite Brown. Claire is the founder of Creativity Found, the Creativity Found podcast. It's an online directory. It has membership, and she founded it really to inspire and encourage adults to get creative and to connect people, bring people together who want to take up a creative activity with artists and crafters who can show them how. Claire, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you. It's wonderful to see you. The most obvious first question, I think, is what inspired you to launch Creativity Found?
Well, it goes back a few steps, as often things do when you look back at it. This led on to this, led on to this. It was never what I expected at all. So the actual start of the Creativity Found podcast was when, during lockdown, I couldn't continue to do my drama and singing classes. So I'd started these drama and singing classes for adults where I hired in teachers because it was a kind of escapism activity that I wanted and I needed for myself. I needed a couple of hours a week to get away from everything else and muck around doing drama and singing exercises. Yeah. And it was without having to learn lines and actually put on a show, just for the enjoyment. So I'd been doing that for a few years. And then, of course, we went into lockdown. So my initial thought was, I'd been speaking to people in those classes and while networking, you know, trying to promote those classes. And when I was explaining what the classes were, people were saying, oh, that's brilliant. I used to love doing such and such, you know, insert creative activity here. But then I got a proper job or got told I was no good or, you know, whatever reason, their creative activity was not important or not deemed important. And then at some point later in life, they'd refound it or found something new and had that extra loveliness and the benefits that, you know, doing something creative for yourself can give to yourself. So those are then the stories I wanted to tell while we were locked down from Open Stage Arts. And that's when I started the Creativity Found podcast. And I was speaking with people I knew who had those experiences. And then that grew into a much bigger and lovelier monster. It's an absolutely super monster, but it all came from somewhere that it wasn't meant to come from at all. So from the podcast, I then started the website and then started the membership. That's where they came from.
Well, and that's, Claire, very much an example of what people can accomplish when they set out to create something, to establish a creative outlet. You know, I started my Truth Tastes Funny podcast at the tail end of the pandemic just to meet people, just because I felt so secluded and so cut off. And there was no monetization aspect to it. There was no business aspect to it. It was just, let's talk to people about surviving and thriving in a crazy world, because we're all going through that. But this way I could meet people. Not only did I meet the podcasting community, but the guests and the people who listen. What's your experience been within the podcasting realm?
Absolutely. That is one of the most important aspects of starting this podcasting journey for me, as well as you say, is the people. I didn't start, as you were saying, because I wanted to meet people,
Yeah.
but it's been such a happy result from doing this. And again, as you say, so I started with guests whom I knew in my local area. And then I joined this absolutely wonderful social media app called Clubhouse that was very big,
Yes.
the audio one. And it was very big in 2021 when people couldn't go out to work. And I met so many people on that app. It was quite bizarre that you're not really seeing the people, you're speaking to them. But I made some really, really good connections there. So I've got people that I met there who I am still friends with and have met in real life since. And that also widened my horizons for podcast guests as well. So I'm now getting podcast guests from, not just in my area of the UK, but all over the UK, in Canada, Australia, America. And that has been absolutely super, meeting all of those people and hearing their stories, because the Creativity Found arc of the show is always the same. What was it like when you were a child? Why did you stop? What did you do when you weren't doing that? Why did you come back to it? How cool and lovely is life for you now? But within that, everybody has their different story. So those have been the fascinating things, hearing people's answers to those questions. But I totally agree with you completely. I was not aware that this was going to be a thing, was all my podcasty people who I can speak to about podcasty things, like you, for example, who I met at Podfest this
Right.
year. The other people I've met at other networking events. I went to the London Podcast Show this year for the third year, and the amount of people that you're meeting again, and you go, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And we've just met each other through this outlet of podcasting. It is hugely important to me, and I feel very grateful to have that in my life.
Yeah, yeah, me as well. Although you have, it seems, the local aspect, the kind of in real life aspect, which I'm based for most of the time in Iowa City, where obviously I'm fortunate to have a lot of family here and have a really strong kind of, home base, so to speak, but very apart from the endeavors that I'm doing for work and podcasting and every now and then I connect with someone who's here who also is in one of the groups I'm in, or a podcast or a business person. But for the most part, it's virtual and it's me going to the events. So tell us a little bit about the in real life aspect of this.
Well, I am in the fortunate position that I do not live too far away from London. And a lot of these events are happening in London. And I can get on a coach and go to London for the evening and come back home again. Um, Equally, events, it's not that difficult for me to go further afield, for example, to the north of the country. It isn't that difficult to get trains and go to the places, stay overnight and get a train back again. So
Right.
I do have that geography of being in the UK, and it possibly is easier. We're closer together than
Yeah.
you guys are across the whole of the United States. But it's still that a lot of stuff does happen in London. And so that's not so fortunate for people who do live, up north. But for me, it's very easy for me to actually just go out and meet the people. But I have met a lot of people online as well. And then if you're able to meet, say, for example, the podcast show London, as I mentioned, it's a 2-day event. People can come from further afield. So people you've met from further afield, you can meet there that once a year, in real life.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about this childhood to adulthood evolution. Because as I mentioned before the show, I was just thinking about that this morning, about child prodigies and whether they live up to the hype and the expectations that not the world really, but themselves. I'm not as concerned about what the world expects us to do based on what we've put out or any of that. It's more of a internal inside job. It's like, what are we expecting of ourselves? So tell me a little bit about the childhood to adulthood creativity journey.
Yeah, I think there's two aspects to that. You talking about prodigy is perhaps the opposite of what a lot of people experience, and it is from an outside influence. And I have heard a lot of people saying, when I was in art class, the art teacher told me I wasn't very good, or
Uh,
there was always. This is what you were talking about your daughter. There's someone else in the class who's better than me, so I don't feel I live up to that. So there are external influences that make people so. Another external influence is with regards to whether you pursue creative activities, is that if you are good at other things as well, like if you're good at science, you're then channeled, certainly in the education system in the UK, you're channeled to then concentrate on science, and you don't have space for the creativity. You just do the sciencey stuff, and then you will have the pressure on you of if you're going to achieve what people expect you to achieve. So there's that aspect. It's sometimes the creative subjects are thought of as second best,
yeah.
and also people connect creativity with being good at drawing, which is not the only thing. There's so much to your creative mind and to your creative ability with what you can do. And then the other thing, what was the other thing? Oh, I know what the other thing was. It was also, as you say, putting the pressure on yourself
Yeah.
that you should be good at it. So this is another very common theme in the show, is that people then, when they've got a bit older, or when they're younger, they'll go, this looks great. And then they'll look at the same thing at another age, same painting, and they think they start to critique themselves. At
Hmm.
some point in life, you think, oh, I don't like that, I'm not very good at that. And then that continues into adulthood. So when adults might feel they need to be doing something else, I certainly experienced this with people coming to my drama classes and being wary, is that they felt that they should be good at it straight away. They only want to try it if they're going to be good at it. They're going to be embarrassed among other people if they're not good at it. So again, all these external concerns are maybe holding them back from having a go at something creative. Whereas really what we want to be doing is having a go at something creative for the fun of it, just to do it rather than to worry about what the result's going to be and how that's going to compare to somebody else's result.
Yeah. I think as I get older, I'm more patient with the learning process. And I recognize that when I was younger, there was a sense of that, I want to do what I'm good at, you know, because honestly, it's going to be less disappointing. That's really what it is. It's not even the work that it takes to get good at something. It means that if it takes work, then you're not automatically good at it. And if you can excel at something that other people don't excel at as readily, for some people it's sports, for some people it's creative, it's writing, could be business, could be numbers, whatever it is. But I think it's so much more enriching to pursue excellence in a certain field or endeavor for its own sake, and as we get older, we take up things, or we even the things we've already studied and are doing, like I remember my father was an attorney, and there were continuing education courses and things like that. And I always thought, well, that's ridiculous. You already went to law school. You're already a lawyer. You already have a practice. Why, what is the whole thing for that? But now I totally get it. Now I embrace it. Oh, you're always learning. You're always expanding. I had the same attitude looking at people who would take up, knitting or some other, take up a sport or take up a thing as they got older. And I was like, you know, why? Like why? And I guess
Yeah.
now I'm realizing, there's so much to learn and do.
And there is much to learn from making mistakes. For example, in a knitting pattern, you can make a mistake that means you're not then following the pattern, but you can learn to correct that, or you can learn to not do that in the future. And you're learning all the time about how you do a thing as well. As another knitting example, gauge. I edit books on these kind of topics, so that's why I know
Right.
little bits of this. And your gauge might be too tight, and you need to learn about how you use your hands and how you use the needles, not just what it says in the book, but how that relates to how you actually do it. So, I mean, certainly within podcasting alone, I have learnt so much just by doing it from nothing, and then keeping an eye out on what's going on, what other people are doing, what's going on in the whole world of podcasting. Because as we know, technology wants to change all the time, but just learnings as you go along,
Yeah.
which I think are hugely important.
Well, one thing I want to touch on is, we often on this show will kind of chart the course of a business or an endeavor, and say, and some of my guests have exited the businesses that we're talking about. Sometimes it's a startup. I just talked to someone earlier today who launched, within the last month. And so, especially post-pandemic, I've seen so many new businesses, so many new endeavors launched. So, given that this is fairly recent for you, what is on your vision board, let's say, for Creativity Found in the next year?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with me, Hirsch, is that I tend to get ideas and then I go, okay, I'll go and do it then. I'll go and make that work. And then I've just got too many ideas. So, so I started the Creativity Found directory as the next step from the podcast. So the podcast was the inspiration, and I'd been doing that for a year or two, wanted to take that further. That could go further. So where can listeners go to find creative activities to try for themselves? That's what we'll do. I'm the trusted podcast host. You've been listening to me. You can trust me to put you in front of some really lovely teachers or people who make kits. I'm also a small independent business, so those are the kind of businesses I want to support, and that's where the membership comes on. I've also learned since before the podcast, certainly through networking through Open Stage Arts, is that I am very good at speaking with people. I'd have no problem walking into a room completely on my own. I don't stand up and speak. I'm not very showy, but I can speak with people. I don't feel terribly awkward about it. So that's something I can use to help my members. I can talk about my members when I'm out meeting people. So this is it's a kind of circle, really. So I support the members of the Creativity Found Collective by promoting them on the website, on the podcast, having us meet up online because we're independent businesses all over the country, isolated. We need to get together and have a chat every now and then. Also, maybe talk about some specific businessy type questions, because we're also all artists and crafters, and we want to spend more time doing the arty crafty stuff, not doing all the stuff around having your own business, your marketing, your SEO, your social media, whatever,
Sure.
your accounting. We want to try and make that all easier. So my big thing is just to continue supporting our members to make it easier for them, connecting them with other people who can help them. We have members now at Creativity Found Collective who do some of those other roles, like a logo designer, an SEO expert, because I want to tell everybody that you can outsource some of that work that you don't want to do, or some of that work that you're not as good as. Somebody else could do it much,
Yes,
much
yes.
quicker than you, and you won't have to pay them loads and loads of money. So it's definitely, for me, a lot of connecting. So not only am I connecting people who want to start a creative activity, who have heard stories on my podcast of people who have done it in real life, and they think, yes, if that person can do it, I can do it. I'll go and give
Yeah.
it a go. So I take them to that next step. So there's that side, and then there's the business side of somebody who has taken that step, and they've taken that step further to try and make some money from it, well, let's give you some support as well. So I'm going to continue with that kind of infinity symbol there of helping on both sides and being a bit of a conduit. You can't, kind of in between a creativity conduit. So while I don't have anything specific, and this is the other thing about having an idea and just doing it, if I were to speak to a business coach, they would probably not like what I have to say at all. I tend to just go with it and then figure it out while I'm doing it. So don't have like a blueprint for the next year or anything like that. But I've already set up this lovely, very successful website, and we want to just keep doing more of that and really just keep supporting the people that need it.
Yeah, well, I'm as much as I'm an advocate of planning and execution and operations, I'm also a big proponent of seeing where it goes, seeing where it leads. I think you need something like that in your life, and that's a large, impetus for creativity found. I think you need something in your life that doesn't adhere to a very strict ROI model. Like you say, some people it's taken off and now they're thinking, oh, I can monetize this. But that's much better than saying I'm going to start a creative pursuit with the business in the business return having to be X. That's
Yeah.
very challenging. I changed my business model with my partners back in 2011 or 12, and we shifted from a successful business model to a more challenging creative model. And we would have just been so much better off not challenging the model or putting all the pressure on the model, because we could
Yeah.
have pursued the creative endeavor for its own sake and just said,
Yeah.
we can dedicate X numbers a week. It can even be a really important creative endeavor. Maybe it will monetize, but to try to combine the two things into a strict monetization model was too much pressure to put on
And
ourselves
I
and took
think
some of the joy out of the creative endeavor.
exactly. And I think going back to what you said about prodigy and disappointing yourself, if you fix on a particular outcome, then you are likely, not likely, but more likely to be disappointed because you're not being flexible enough with that outcome. And if that outcome doesn't work exactly how you thought it was going to when you used your looking into the future goggles,
Right.
it's about adapting. And this is again experiences of my guests, just because, and usually this will be in a hobby form or something, again, something people are worried about, that I should start this thing and I should be good at it, but I should also stick with it. And that's something else we talk about. Now, this is, a step back from business, but having the freedom to try something and then go, oh, actually, I don't actually like it as much as I thought I was going to. I'll go and try something else instead. And that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, as we kind of circle around here, let us tell us where that website is, where we can find you, and also um, a message for people who are on their own journey, and it may be a creative journey that's tied to business or something that they haven't yet done in their creative life, but something you would tell the listeners out there that are interested in creativity but aren't quite sure how to work it into their lives.
I mean, that could be a very practical bit of advice, couldn't it? Or I could say, don't listen to people's advice. Because I kind of think um, you want to explore something from your heart, from where you feel it comes from, which sounds all a bit wishy-washy, but it's kind of like don't have too much emphasis on what other people think or what you think other people think. Try to really trust in yourself and what you're thinking and what you're feeling, and let that just come out as well. So when we used to do drama class, and people would come in very nervous. As soon as you did the first silly thing and everybody laughed and we all knew, there you go, nobody's going to die. It's fun. We're just enjoying it. So it's that kind of deep down feeling. So that's not very useful advice at all. Don't follow advice. Do what you want to do.
Well, that's the advice.
That's
The
my advice.
the advice is don't follow the advice.
Yeah.
And what is the URL that people can
So
find if they want to follow you but not follow the advice?
Well, you see, that's not advice then. You see, if they go to creativityfound.co.uk, they can have a lovely mooch around and see all the different options, get a feel for what's out there, have a look at the photography, have a look at what people offer, because as well as the actual craft or art or activity, people teach them in different ways. As you know, I'm in the UK, so there are in real life workshops, but there are also lots of online offerings. There are also kits that people send out so you can do it at home. So if you're the social person that wants to be out with real people, you're looking for real workshops. If you're a bit more reticent about that, or the thing you want to do is make a kilt. For example, I have a lady in Scotland who teaches kilts. Now, you can't necessarily travel to her in real life thing in Scotland, but you can do a whole online course with her. So look at it in that way as well. So please, yes, do. It's creativityfound.co.uk. It's really clear to find everything you need to find. The podcast is there as well. And it's a lovely site to have a mooch around on and see what's out there. And for anybody that actually teachers themselves and wants to join our promotional, supportive, networking membership, then the page is, you can see it very clearly at the top of the screen, but it's creativityfound.co.uk/join us. And that gets all the information for that as well.
All right.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, then
subscribe and leave a
yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?